Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gürjul Gezer. I'm a former career diplomat from the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I am currently a foreign policy director at the Turkey Economic Policy Foundation. And I have the distinct honor today to host this panel on Turkey-Egypt relations. Now, before we actually start the panel, and I leave the floor to our panelists, I would like the collaborators of today, the Ankara Policy Center, diplomats, and Global Trade Forum representatives to briefly introduce themselves as well as their institutions. Ambassador Ceylan from Ankara Policy Center, would you be kind enough to start, sir?
Thank you very much indeed, Gülru. And I should also like to extend my thanks to GTF and diplomats for taking part in this webinar as free collaborators. Certainly, I'm honored to thank the two prominent ambassadors, Ambassador Göktürk and Ambassador Selahattin, and also a leading scholar, Dalia Ziyada, to participate in this seminar. I will not forget you, Gülru. Thank you for moderating this important webinar. And last but not least, the audience that will take part in this webinar. Ankara Policy Center is an association that comprises in the main retired Turkish diplomats with on the average 40 years of diplomatic career. And it focuses on different aspects of Turkish foreign and security policy. So with this brief introduction, let me pass the floor back to you, Gülru. And once again, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Ambassador Ceylan. Now, Dr. Goran, would you be kind enough to introduce diplomats, please?
Thank you. It is a pleasure being here for me, for Camille Limon, my colleague at Diplomat. Diplomat is the Council for Mediterranean Diplomacy. It's a policy group based in the Netherlands that brings together experts, retired ambassadors, think tank leaders, policy analysts from all parts of the Mediterranean who come together to look at the region, to try and improve interstate relations, to advance inclusivity and regional cooperation and conflict resolution. And over the last year and a half, we've been working a team of experts within Diplomat with a regional outlook on Turkey-Egypt approachment, how to advance it, what does the process look like, what recommendation could be set on the table for its success, what are the regional implications, the constructive one that could be advanced following that. And we are very glad to be able to share here some of the insights that have been published by Dalia Ziyada and Pinar and Ambassador Selahattin and others on what we have achieved throughout this year and a half. And glad to say that this relationship is actually moving forward and already has some regional implication, as we just saw now between Israel and Turkey and Egypt, finding a mechanism to try and help those injured in Gaza. So thank you for the cooperation, and I wish all the speakers and the audience a successful event.
Okay, and last but not least, Mr. Shafak Herdem, can I ask you to first introduce yourself and then GTF, please?
Thank you, Gülru. I am Shafak Herdem, the founding president of the GTF, which is an industrial think tank based in Istanbul that is dedicated to enhancing the Turkish market's global presence and readiness for the next industrial revolution. Today, we explore the organic relationship between Egypt and Turkey, assessing the potential for mutual economic growth and regional impact. We have gathered in collaboration with Ankara Policy Center and diplomats, esteemed ambassadors and experts to discuss economic and strategic dimensions of this relationship. Their insights and experiences are invaluable in shaping our understanding of the opportunities and the challenges ahead. Thank you for joining us in this important conversation.
Well, thank you very much again for contributing and making this event happen to all three of you and your institutions. Now, I will like to start the panel, and I would like to ask each of our panelists to talk for 15 minutes in the first round, And then we might have a second round where each panelist can comment on each other's views for like 5 more minutes. And then we will open the floor to a Q&A session. I would like to ask our participants to send the questions and also indicate who they are posing the questions to. So firstly, I would like to start with Ambassador Göktürk. Ambassador Göktürk worked, and I will briefly, Mr. Ambassador, if you allow me, I will briefly introduce you. Ambassador Göktürk worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs between 1979 and 2019. He served in our embassies in Athens, in Tehran. He was our Consul General in Frankfurt. He was also our ambassador to Egypt, of course, Singapore, and Norway. He also served as Deputy Director General for Middle Eastern Affairs and Director General for Policy Planning. Ambassador Göktürk holds a bachelor degree from the famous Ankara University. Ambassador, please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gülru. It is in fact a privilege for me to be among this distinguished group of panelists. I shall try to be brief. I may not consume the total 15 minutes. I shall make a brief review of our bilateral relations background and where we may be headed from this point on. Well, the significance of the Turkish-Egyptian relations cannot be overstated. Each country's share and regional heft present a wide spectrum of opportunities for cooperation. I witnessed this firsthand while I had the privilege to serve as ambassador in Cairo in the latter half of the 2000s. Our economic cooperation grew exponentially, political dialogue intensified and deepened, and cultural bonds became more evident. For a while, it looked as if we were destined to stay that way. I oversaw 6 presidential and no less than a dozen foreign minister visits during my 4-year tenure. I lost count of the exchanges of other official as well as business delegations. We developed such a close coordination and continuous dialogue that in the process, we forgot about formal representations. They simply became unnecessary. I always saw my profession from a historical and sociological perspective. Narratives speak more than their words worth. Having also served in Athens and Tehran, I understand well that one's identity in regard with others solidifies through historical interaction. Egypt remained an Ottoman holding after the end of the 18th century only in name, because an independent-minded Ottoman governor would soon realize the futility of submitting to Istanbul when Egypt represented so much more on its own. If Egypt today stands out in its region with its deeper-rooted institutional framework and social vibrancy, it is the result of its own efforts to both challenge and harness foreign factors in its drive for independent statehood. Turkey, too, emerged as a nation-state after the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. The young republic represented the antithesis of imperial domination. Sovereign equality became the cornerstone of its relations. Ottoman legacy in the region did not vanish, but Turkey's new disposition was clear. Let me share with you a brief excerpt from the book of famous Turkish writer and thinker in the early Republican era, Falih Rıfkı Atay. He was, in fact, the chief of cabinet of Cemal Pasha, the general who led the Ottoman army through Syria and Palestine down to the Suez Canal in an attempt to take it back from the British. And this is the quotation. The Turkish energy can produce miracles only when it is harnessed in an articulated and orderly manner. This energy, which was wasted in the desire to hoist the flag of a totally neglected homeland to Cairo, was never employed for the purpose of making the deserted Anatolia a rich and prosperous homeland. The Turk was utilized, prized, and glorified in war and abundant in peace. There is an inescapable geopolitical factor that renders our bilateral relations more gravitational than many others. We both connect continents, embrace Eastern Mediterranean and the Levant. It is not an accident of history that ancient Egypt and the Hittites, the reigning power in Anatolia then, produced the first written peace treaty more than 3 millennia ago and in today's Syria. Almost ever since, peace prevailed in the wider region when the two were bound together, and incessant conflicts characterized the same geography when they remained apart. As imperial times are happily over, it is now incumbent upon us as sovereign partners to impress on the region as mutual generators of peace and stability. So, if this is the template, then how we found ourselves in such a downgraded state of relations through the past decade will be a legitimate question. There have been downturns before. They deserve retrospective reflection, and their setting was national consolidation and Cold War. This time around, the downward spiral began owing to two interacting factors. The popular uprisings across the Arab world, where Egypt again demonstrated its centrality, shook the entire region. For a while, governments remained on their back feet. Then, in Egypt, elections brought a former political outcast to the helm. For a while, matters hung in balance. Meanwhile, in Turkey, the government was showing increasing signs of reverting to its Islamist past. It accordingly misinterpreted the Arab popular wave as a boon for its ideological mates, whereas it was a broader cry for dignified citizenship, freedom, and better bread. The rest is history. Ideological fervor blinded the Turkish government. It internalized the turn of events first in Egypt and then elsewhere and established an existential connection between the Brotherhood's plight in the region and its own standing at home. Moreover, the Gezi Park demonstrations coincided with the removal of Morsi from power in Egypt, and the leadership in Turkey would never recover from that syndrome. Its impact on our bilateral relations has been devastating. The subsequent years saw a surge in government's assertive policies towards regional neighbors, all connected to boosting its domestic image. This resulted in Turkey's growing isolation. Egypt, in turn, pursued a rigorous policy to isolate Turkey in this process. The Turkish government thus decided to change tack from 2021 on, in earnest, abandoning ideological overtones and confrontational discourse. The normalization with Egypt has been part of this process. We know it took some time and several ups and downs before the ambassadors could take up their positions in our respective capitals. The two main sticking points have been the state of Muslim Brotherhood's presence and activities in Turkey and the extent of Turkey's collaboration with the government in Libya's west. Throughout the past decade, our bilateral economic relations have not been particularly affected, although the prevalence of a better atmosphere would have boosted them further. The restoration of full diplomatic representation does not automatically translate into close relations as before. It will require the rebuilding of trust, which depends on the actual performance of both sides. I anticipate a cooler than temperate atmosphere for some time to come. Egypt will likely test the Turkish government's new position if the government's position is merely an expression born out of necessity or a genuine re-evaluation of approach. In turn, Turkey will try to understand if Egypt's recent alignments in the broader region are meant to be to its exclusion. Regional dynamics also influence the path forward. The war in Syria and Turkey's involvement therein drew scorn from many in the region, including Egypt. Turkey now has some convincing to do that it differentiates between its border security and its wider presence in Syria. It has already signaled that it has no interest in staying once Damascus assumes full control, that is, also preventing all causes of cross-border harassment and infiltration. The war in Gaza again highlighted the volatility of the uneasy calm in the region. Turkey and Egypt do not have conflicting views on the question of Palestine. Otherwise, their roles are both quantitatively and qualitatively different. Turkey is a non-party. Egypt is a former party to the conflict, is a frontline state, and has a peace treaty with Israel, which contains provisions also on the issue of Palestine. Equally crucially, Egypt is a leading player in the Arab world, and which makes its role central in the management of the conflict. Turkey's place is more related to the wider context, where it can contribute to the easing of tensions and the eventual settlement of the issue, stabilizing factor. For that to happen, though, Turkey needs to return to its time-honored position of remaining outside the fray and maintaining the lines of communications with all parties concerned open and sound. Modern Turkey's foreign policy had two golden rules for this region. First one, do not be involved in inter-Arab issues. Two, do not interfere in their domestic affairs. The Turkish government now is apparently seeing the merit in returning to this path. Our two countries should again show the wisdom to keep their relations clear of others' influence. To achieve and maintain this, both sides need to contain their divergences within the boundaries of the issues in question. And I will stop here and wish to listen to other panelists where we can, which I shall be able to interact. Thank you.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Now, before I give the floor to Ambassador Salahuddin, I would like to also briefly introduce him. He has served for 40 years as an Egyptian diplomat in the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, and he served as ambassador, of course, to Turkey and the Czech Republic. He was also assistant foreign minister. I think my voice is being echoed. He has extensive experience in the US, and he obtained a PhD in political science from Charles University, Prague, with a focus on Egyptian foreign policy. He now lectures on Arab and American affairs at the Egyptian Foreign Ministry's Diplomatic Institute, and he's also policy support group member at Diplomats. Ambassador, thank you, by the way, for being able to participate in this event in your tight schedule. I know you're traveling, you're in our beautiful city, Istanbul. Welcome to Turkey. Ahlan wa sahlan. The floor is yours, Ambassador.
Thank you, Gurlu Hanım. I'm very happy to be participating in this timely webinar when I am back to my favorite city, Istanbul, after 10 years of absence. And I like very much the way Ambassador Shafak portrayed our two countries' relationship throughout history up to the present moment. This echo is definitely not from me because I am on the headphones. So I think if
Yes,
everyone,
I just, with all due respect, I muted Ambassador Göktürk's microphone because it's coming from him, I guess. With all due respect, Ambassador Salahattin.
that's okay. That's okay. So without any prior coordination, I wholeheartedly agree with every word Ambassador Shafak said about our two countries' relationship. And I would like to focus more on the way forward, as I fully agree with his prescription and analysis of the background. The way forward on the bilateral level, I guess we have great potential, the two countries have, in the economic area. Our trade today has doubled since I left Turkey. It was $5 billion total trade. Today it stands at $10 billion, of which they're almost equally distributed between imports and exports of both countries. So 5 each. But out of the 5 billion Egyptian exports, we have $2 billion worth of gas. And interestingly enough, most of this gas actually is not Egyptian gas. It's Israeli gas liquefied in Egypt, in EDCO and the Mieta facilities, and re-exported to Western Europe, and part of it is Turkey. So that gives you an idea about how the two countries' cooperation and relation can reflect positively, in my opinion, on the regional cooperation in the wider context. So the Turkish isolation in the Eastern Mediterranean could simply go away because of the cooperation of the two countries. I remember the Turkish generals back in 2012, when we had mutual naval exercises between the two countries, they used to be very proud of the fact that the strongest two navies in the Eastern Mediterranean are working together. This is the idea that I would like to promote looking into the future, that these two countries would look to themselves as the largest two nations in the Eastern Mediterranean. Together, we are more than 1/3 of the population of the Middle East. Together, we are about $1.5 trillion of GDP. And together, we constitute probably the biggest military force in the region. So together, I think these two countries, if they agree, I think can impact security, stability, and peace in the region. So economically, back to the economics, I think Turkish investments in Egypt could easily triple in the next 2 years, because there are two areas where Turkish businesses are booming in Egypt. Textile is one, and automotives. And in these two areas, there are great potentials for Turkish businesses to have cooperation and partnership, even with our public sector, in order to revive the Egyptian textile industry. And I think there are great potentials there, and already Turkish businesses started to recognize it. We are waiting for President Erdogan to come and visit Egypt and present his counterpart with the Turkish electric car that he is gifting to other leaders in the region. But it's actually very symbolic of what could be done together also, because it is not only the Egyptian market of 105 million Egyptians, but via all the trade agreements that Egypt has with African nations, with Israel, with Europe, with the Arab nations, Turkish businesses in Egypt are able to export more than half of their production in Egypt to countries like, for example, the United States, using what we call qualified industrialized zones, where we have about 10% of Israeli products going into this joint production, and they would have free of customs access to the US market, for example. They have the same free access to, because they are produced in Egypt, to 900 million or more Africans and about 300 million Arabs. That's economic. When it comes to regional cooperation, I think Ambassador Shafak rightly mentioned that Libya is a good test. Is a very good test because it is immediately neighboring Egypt. It's a source of constant national security threat to our western borders, and Turkey can play definitely a very influential role in reaching an agreement between East and West in Libya, to have one central government in control of Libya. And again, the war in Ukraine proved that Libya is very vital to the Western European economies because of its oil resources and because of its gas resources and otherwise. And also because of the fact that Libya is now the transit point for illegal immigration that is really flooding countries like Greece and Italy. So not only from Libya, but from all nations in Africa, and even some Egyptians who would like to flee the country, but they cannot do it from Egypt because we are sealing our shores in the face of illegal immigration. So they go to Libya and do it there. So there too, Egypt and Turkey can work together. And I am already seeing good signs of coordination between the two governments. Beyond resolving the political differences, the two countries and the two nations can also work in Libya constructively. For example, their construction companies, their IT companies, Libya has a lot of potentials for joint Turkish-Egyptian businesses and joint ventures. And I don't see this explored enough. And if we widen our circle of examination to the whole continent in Africa, I see similar potential cooperation in areas in East Africa, like Somalia, where Turkey actually was pioneer in establishing its presence in Somalia and helping the Somalis try to develop some kind of infrastructure and education, etc., and health. And I think Egyptian-Turkish cooperation there has great potential. I also believe that Turkey can play a constructive role to persuade Ethiopia to reach an agreement with Egypt on the Grand Renaissance Dam, on the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam, that is denying Egypt a great part of its existing water resources. And if Turkey is successful in doing so, it would gain a lot of Egyptian recognition and confidence in the area of confidence building that Ambassador Shafak referred to, and I agree with him there too. So when we look at the Gaza war and how things are going today, I am very happy to see that the two governments are working together to deliver assistance to the Turkish assistance to Palestinians in Gaza in full coordination with the Egyptian government, with the full coordination of the Egyptian NGOs who are working there. Everything is coordinated, pre-coordinated, cleared. When I look back in 2009, I think Ambassador Shafak described, I don't want really to go to the past, but there, when Turkey gave up on its abstention of interfering in internal Arab politics, things went differently. So today, let us focus on the positive side. Today we see full coordination. We see Turkish ships heading to Egypt carrying tent hospitals and equipments, and fully coordinated with Egypt. And Egypt is fully coordinating it with Israel, and there is no effort to try to use this domestically for political purposes, because we could be harming the peace chances if we do that. The problem is always trying to look back to your own domestic politics and try to score points. And this is very important that we focus on the long term and the chances for peace. And like what Ambassador Shafak said, we both agree on how peace should look like. Two-state solution, Palestinian state on the 1967 borders, sharing Jerusalem as the capital of two states. East Jerusalem for the Palestinian state, and West Jerusalem is for Israel. And a sovereign, viable, and contiguous Palestinian state. So there too, we have agreement. And we have agreement with the rest of the Arabs on this. And we should not be shy about it. We should also use our contacts with Israel and with the United States and with the rest of the Western nations to try to promote this vision. What I would like to conclude with is really the area that is, I would say, somehow neglected in our cooperation, which is culture, people-to-people relationship when it comes to education. It is not explored to its full extent. You know that Turkish cultural products are very popular in Egypt. TV series and even literature is widely translated in Arabic. I don't see the same happening with Egyptian literary products and movies, TV series, and to tell you the truth, our main obstacle is translation. I don't see enough interests of bilinguists, Turks, who would help us produce these in Turkish language. And as you know, without being dubbed in Turkish or subtitled in Turkish, it will have no market in Turkey. So we need people and partners to work with us. I hope some of our viewers today have special interest in that. I will stop here. I took all my 15 minutes, so I will stop here. Thank you.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Now I will give the floor to Dalia Ziada, our only woman panelist. And I will briefly introduce her as well to you. So Dalia is the director of the MEEM Center for Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean Studies and Policy Support Group member at Diplomats. Dalia is an award-winning Egyptian writer and author of The Curious Case of the Three-Legged Wolf, Egypt, Militarism, Islamism, and Liberal Democracy. She leads the Liberal Democracy Institute and the MEEM Center. Previously, Ziada held key roles at the Ibn Khaldun Center for Democratic Studies and the American Islamic Congress. And she is an expert at Diplomats and the Council for Mediterranean Diplomacy. Dalia today will be talking about an article she co-authored titled Putting Egypt-Turkey Relations on a Sustainable Footing. And Dalia, in the article, if you allow me, I'll read a short paragraph from that. You say that as officials navigate their way through the process of mending broken ties, it is essential to identify practical steps to capitalize on this diplomatic breakthrough. Sustainable peace can only be ensured by shifting the focus from political ideology to shared interests. One way to do this is by creating an inclusive, multi-track process that involves state institutions, businesses, non-governmental organizations, academics, and the grassroots. So please go ahead. I leave the floor to you, and if you can elaborate on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gorlu, and everyone on the panel as the great ambassadors, and their interventions were very useful. And thank you also for bringing up our paper, because it was a really interesting project, because I wrote with Dr. Pinar Akpinar via Diplomeds. Our group actually was not only involved in writing the paper, but we were also involved in the process of the reconciliation that happened between Egypt and Turkey, which, thank God, we found it developing magically over the past year, despite a lot of delays and slowdowns that happened before that, mainly because of what you've just mentioned from our paper, the ideological differences between the two leaderships of Egypt and Turkey, the current leaderships. But what we are seeing today, and these ideological differences revolve mainly around how both sides perceive the role of political Islamism in politics, or the role of Islamist organizations in politics. And here, actually, the difference comes mainly from the fact that the weight or the word political Islamism in Turkey has a different meaning, and the word political Islamism in our Arab region has a completely different meaning. And from there came this contradiction. And also another issue of core ideological difference between the two countries was the issue of democratization, and how each of them values democracy versus maybe looking towards more of an authoritarian, not authoritarian, I would say more autocratic system of leadership. So we can say that the international pressures that are now happening, or the pressures that are now happening as a result of international and regional conflicts, are allowing or creating an urgency and an opportunity for collaboration between Egypt and Turkey beyond the complications of their ideological ideological differences of the leaderships, and beyond the many complexities actually of their bilateral relationship. And it's not only creating an area for collaboration on the regional context or even the international context, but also on their immediate bilateral relations in terms of economics, trade, military cooperation even, and also people-to-people cooperation, which is a or people-to-people communication, I mean, which is a very important aspect in this regard. I was in Cairo airport recently, and you would be surprised how many Turkish people were there coming just to enjoy Egypt as tourists. And I was really surprised, like, for the first time in many, many years, I can hear people talking Turkish around me. So it was a significant moment, I think. And the main and it's also very important, like a very important indication on how the people were yearning for this moment. We're waiting impatiently for the political conflicts to come to an end so they can really come together again. Because as we all know, there are a lot of cultural similarities between Egypt and Turkey that goes back to hundreds of years ago. So this is one aspect. But actually, speaking about the international conflicts that are now influencing or pushing the two countries to cooperate together, finally, I would like to focus more on the war now that's going on in Gaza, the Gaza crisis, I would say, because it actually created a new momentum, a whole new momentum for Turkey, and not only Turkey-Egypt relationship, but Turkey-Arab relationship. As Ambassador Abdurrahman was just saying, and also Ambassador Shafak was just saying, like, for many, many years, Arabs were always complaining about Turkish intervention in Arab affairs. Like, literally in every Arab League meeting, there must come, like, at the conclusion of every meeting, there must be this statement. It's like it has become a staple in each concluding statement, like, we condemn Turkish involvement in Arab affairs. It's in everyone. And actually, it seems like also on the Turkish side, they have been also used to that, to the extent that they have been also preparing a response statement to this one. And it has become kind of, kind of systematic process that should happen every year at the conclusion of Arab League meetings. But this time is different. This time, the Arabs and the Egyptians are calling upon Turkey to intervene, are calling upon Turkey to help with the humanitarian situation in Gaza, are calling upon Turkey to send aid materials. And we are seeing unprecedented, maybe not totally unprecedented, but I would say in the past 10 years, unprecedented cooperation on this issue. And I think also there is a great potential that the Turkish leadership and the Egyptian leadership can cooperate on finding a solution for the Israel-Palestinian conflict on the long run, and also for the current war in Israel. Of course, despite the interesting differences now also between the two leaders regarding their perception to Hamas, and also regarding to their perception to the importance of the Israeli relationship, and the general state of polarization that this Israel-Hamas war is now causing in the region in general. But there are certain points that the Turkish leadership and the Egyptian leadership agree on regarding the Israel-Palestinian conflict that they can build on for the future. One of it is the importance of ending the humanitarian crisis for the Palestinian people in Gaza, which I think everyone agrees on, even the Israelis themselves. And I've seen many Israeli academics and politicians even speaking about the importance of ending this humanitarian crisis. And also I've seen like plans or policies suggested by Israeli academics about what needs to be done for the Palestinian people in the future, which is a very important thing to highlight here. So we have an agreement on this point also between the Turkish and Egyptian leadership. Both of them have relatively good relationships with Hamas and Israel. Of course, recently we have seen the relationship, some tensions in the relationship between Israel and Turkey, but I'm sure as soon as this war comes to an end, things will be restored again. Both countries need each other very much, especially on the economic side. For example, in our paper that you've mentioned, Ms. Gorlu, sorry.
It's a complicated name.
Gorluru. Miss Gorlero, yeah. So in this paper actually that you've just mentioned, we wrote about a very interesting idea of cooperation, of a triangle of cooperation in the Eastern Mediterranean between Turkey, Israel, and Egypt that can, first of all, create a platform for Turkey to be once again involved in the Eastern Mediterranean conflict after years of being purposefully isolated. I'm sorry actually to say that, by other key actors in the region for several political reasons that Ambassador Shafak beautifully mentioned, but also it's now looking at this, the potential of this cooperation, which is very, very important for Turkey, Egypt, and Israel, and also for Europe and for the exportation of gas and solving the gas crisis that was caused by the Russia-Ukraine war recently. Now this idea or this potential is at risk. And it's at risk because of another war that erupted in our region, the current Israel-Hamas war. So it's important for Egypt and Turkey to find a way to continue, Egypt, Turkey, and Israel, to find a way to continue to cooperate on this without really making all these international and regional conflicts going on in our world and in our region affect this potential of cooperation. And also this like takes me to other two very important points that we mentioned in our paper as well. One is about the issue of economic cooperation, which we are seeing is actually gaining a great momentum right now between Turkey and Egypt. Trade ministers are meeting on regular basis. There is high ambitions to increase the trade volume to $15 billion within 5 years. And I think both sides are so determined to make it happen. We are also seeing a great number of investors coming to Egypt, Turkish investors coming to Egypt, starting new factories. Actually, some of my relatives even started to work in Turkish factories recently, moving from factories that are owned by European and Chinese investors. So there's also another very important indication on how Turkey is now playing a growingly important role in the Egyptian economy, which I believe is good for both sides. The trade volume is also on an increase, and I think with the open relationships that are happening now, things will improve on much deeper level in the coming years, especially after this beautiful scene that we have been seeing in the past 2 weeks between President El-Sisi and Erdogan, like very friendly body language between them when they met at the Arab Islamic Summit, which for the first time, by the way, was not seen was not received by criticism, I would say, by Turkish and Egyptian audience. This time, they were very welcoming of this friendly relationship between President Erdogan and President El-Sisi, which takes us to a very important point here, which is the regional role that the two countries can play together, or the two leaderships, I would say, can play together in the current moment. One of the main defining aspects of the Turkish politics, Turkish foreign policy, and the Egyptian foreign policy has to do with their regional roles, or the regional roles that each of them can play. For Turkey, the Turkish leadership always views itself as the leader of the Islamic world. And actually, most of the people in the Islamic world worldwide look up at Turkey as a leader. At the same time, for Egypt, Egypt always looks at itself as a leader of Arabs. And historically, Egypt has always been the leader of Arabs and regional foreign policy in that regard. Recently, things are not the same anymore, but I think due to the current Israel-Hamas war, there is also a new momentum for Egypt to regain this role once again and come to the forefront. If we can join like this Islamic leadership role that Turkey represents and this Arab leadership role that Egypt represents in the near future, I think we can do great things together for the good of the Middle East region and for the good of Islamic countries worldwide and can even influence or contribute to influencing other international conflicts like the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, for example. Also, finally here, also speaking about the regional role, if we look like west side towards North Africa, there is a very good potential for Egypt and Turkey to cooperate, as Ambassador Abdurrahman was beautifully mentioning. The issue in Libya, there is a lot of potential of cooperation between Turkey and Egypt and Libya. Both of them are heavily involved in Libya, either politically or even militarily. We can also capitalize on the potential of Libya, of the economic potential of Libya, which will eventually also serve the struggling economies of Turkey and Egypt. But one important aspect for all this to happen is that Turkey and Egypt need to help Libya get out of its political crisis that has been going on for over a decade now. And the good news here is that Turkey and Egypt agree on what needs to be done. They agree that a political solution needs to be applied, that both sides from the western and eastern of Libya needs to find a way to cooperate together and work or coexist, let's say, and they are determined to work on this. So I think this also will be a great area for cooperation between the two countries. Finally, I would like to conclude by a very important aspect that is not usually mentioned, which is the military cooperation between Turkey and Egypt. Both countries are very powerful when it comes to military power, I mean, and Turkey represents a very important source of armament for most of the Arab countries that actually can sell them high-tech arms, high technology arms, I mean, without with very little strings attached, unlike, for example, the weapons sold by Europe or the United States. They are usually attached with conditions related to human rights and democratization and so. But I think like getting or securing armament needs from Turkey would perhaps be easier for Arab countries, especially that Turkey now has become one of the top manufacturers of defense industrial products, not only in the region but worldwide. So this is one very important aspect of cooperation between the two countries. And I think recently there was an official invitation from the Egyptian Ministry of Defense Industries to their Turkish counterparts to come and participate in the Egyptian Defense Expo that will take place next month. So this also a very important indication on how things has improved to the extent that the Egyptian military and the Turkish military can now trust each other for future cooperation. So I think this is like basically the main points I wanted to speak about, and I look forward to discussing more.
Okay.